Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the massive systemic pressure that's currently squeezing Florida's county jail network. Now you might be thinking, hey, isn't jail overcrowding just about rising crime rates? Well, think again. Today we are going to completely shatter that assumption and look at the actual hard data behind the walls of these facilities.
Let's clear something up right off the bat. Overcrowding does not simply equal more arrests. It's actually a systemic traffic jam. It's a bottleneck of time, space, and resources. Meaning it's way less about exactly how many people enter the system on any given day, and far more about how long they're staying there, the staff required to watch them, and, well, the physical limitations of the buildings themselves.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 1. The overcrowding reality, 2. Inside the pretrial data, 3. 5 causes of overcrowding, 4. The systemic and human cost, 5. How Florida counties respond, and finally, 6. What to watch next. Let's get into it. Starting off with Section 1, the overcrowding reality, looking specifically at Florida's decentralized jail network.
So, here's the thing. There is no central jail command in Florida. Instead, picture this massive web of local pressure cookers. They're largely operated by local sheriffs, with just a smaller fraction run directly by counties or private contractors. Because the system is decentralized like this, overcrowding looks completely different depending on what county you're in. A facility down in Miami-Dade might face entirely different daily hurdles than one over in Osceola, even though, at the end of the day, they are both fighting the exact same underlying lack of space and resources.
Moving right along to Section 2, inside the pretrial data, and what we call the waiting room effect.
We absolutely have to nail down this definition first because it changes everything. The vast majority of the people we're talking about today are stuck in a legal waiting room. That's pretrial detention. They are legally presumed innocent, just waiting for their case to resolve. They've been booked into custody, sure, but they have not yet been convicted of a crime. Keeping this front of mind is absolutely crucial because it completely reshapes how we view who is actually taking up these limited beds.
To really wrap our heads around the massive scale of this waiting room, just look at this single number, 3,086. According to October 2025 data, a single facility, Orange County's 33rd Street location, carried an average daily population of over 3,000 people. Pinellas County reported similar numbers, and Miami-Dade's main facilities held thousands as well. Now, these huge numbers don't automatically prove unconstitutional overcrowding, but they absolutely show how heavily used Florida's county jail network remains, day in and day out.
And this right here, this is the kicker. Back in June 2025, over 80% of the population in major facilities like Miami-Dade, Orange, Osceola, and Palm Beach were pretrial detainees. Just process that for a second. 8 out of 10 beds are filled by people who haven't been convicted. It really highlights how incredibly fast those numbers rise when court backlogs grow or when folks simply can't meet the financial or legal conditions of their release.
Which brings us to Section 3, 5 causes of overcrowding, where we diagnose this systemic breakdown.
Okay, so what's actually causing this? Well, there's no single villain to point a finger at. Instead, we're looking at a perfect storm. It's a snowball effect of 5 overlapping systemic pressures piling up on top of one another. High pretrial detention levels form the base. Then, you add local variations in crime and booking. Toss in aging, limited facilities. Pile on severe staffing and medical shortages, and top the whole thing off with slow case processing and court delays. Now, pay attention to this part, because it's a vital distinction. We have physical constraints versus operational constraints. A physical constraint means you have an older, smaller facility, maybe spread out across multiple disconnected buildings. But an operational constraint, that's a lack of sufficient staffing, medical treatment space, or transport capacity. A physical bed isn't actually a usable bed if you don't have the operational staffing or medical capacity to safely monitor the person in it. You could literally have 100 empty beds, but without the guards and nurses, you are still practically overcrowded.
Let's pivot to Section 4, the systemic and human cost, because this goes way beyond just a space problem.
So, what does this actually look like on the ground? At the institutional level, the impact is severe. When you cram too many people into limited space, tension inevitably skyrockets. Correctional officers become incredibly strained. Medical and mental health access slows down to an absolute crawl. And trying to separate different risk levels of inmates, that becomes a daily, high-stakes puzzle. And this matters deeply to the surrounding communities. These are taxpayer-funded institutions struggling to maintain basic constitutional rights, sanitation, and ultimately community safety when a facility is basically just fighting to keep its head above water.
But we also have to look at the human toll.
For the unconvicted folks caught inside this bottleneck, often just because they can't postpone or secure a rapid court date, the fallout is devastating. Because they're sitting in that legal waiting room, they frequently face lost jobs, the loss of their housing, and deep family instability. The everyday consequences of bail practices are intensified immensely when the system itself is moving at a snail's pace.
All right, Section 5, how Florida counties respond. Let's look at how they are managing the crisis.
So, how are local sheriffs actually treating these severe operational symptoms? They're getting creative. Counties are expanding work release or alternative custody programs. They're actively improving their internal classification systems to maximize the limited space they actually do have. They are coordinating closely with the courts on docket management to push cases through faster, and they're heavily utilizing facility transfers and mutual aid. And alongside all of this, the Florida Sheriff's Association heavily supports these administrators by offering compliance guidance and sharing best practices.
Recently, we've also seen some major shifts at the administrative level. In February 2025, the Florida Sheriff's Association announced that all counties had adopted ICE 287G enforcement agreements. Now, while that initiative isn't an overcrowding solution per se, it definitely adds another layer of operational complexity to the jail's broader enforcement functions. Looking ahead, the newly updated 2026 Florida Model Jail Standards became effective on January 1, 2026. The state is constantly updating these frameworks to define exactly what safe operations must look like, even as populations continue to surge. And that brings us to our final section, Section 6, What to Watch Next, highlighting the key indicators for 2026 and beyond.
Going forward, if you're keeping tabs on this, and you definitely should be, skip the raw arrest totals. They don't tell the whole story. Instead, keep your eyes glued to these specific metrics to build a real toolkit for the future. Track the average daily population, because that reveals the true system-wide baseline strain. Watch the pretrial share, as it highlights court efficiency and the real-world impact of bail practices. Definitely keep an eye on facility age and staffing, which shows us that crucial difference between practical capacity and physical capacity that we talked about earlier. And finally, monitor alternatives to incarceration to see local adaptation and diversion success. Because ultimately, Florida's overcrowding is a massive, system-wide pressure point.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to chew on. If pretrial populations stay this high and staffing remains exceptionally tight, can any set of updated minimum operational standards truly fix a system where the basic math of beds, staff, and time is fundamentally broken? It's really a question of physical reality versus administrative rules. And it is the exact tension that will define Florida's justice system for the foreseeable future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.